Hey, so today's episode of Shortcuts, the accelerated guitar method with me, Paul deMarco, is all about creating riffs. So far we've looked at chords, we've looked at single note patterns by learning the pentatonic scale, and we've started expressing ourselves differently with that. But songs generally have a riff in, especially rock songs or guitar-based songs tend to have a riff. So what is a riff? Well, a riff is a guitar motif which is repeated throughout the song. It's usually a short collection of notes that gets repeated and is probably played instead of putting chords in. Sometimes it uses chords and single notes, but let's deal with the single note ideas first. So any riff really by Led Zeppelin, for example, would be a good instance of that. Actually, this one includes includes the riff and the chords. So, for example, there's a good example. How about Beatles Day Tripper? And like I say, some might use chords as well. So like, how about the Kinks' You Really Got Me? Now technically, although I'm playing, I'm actually playing the same two chords, it sounds more like a riff to me than a chord sequence. So I would take that as a riff. Yeah, another example is Acdc's Back in Black. So which is a combination of chords and single notes, so you might get so there's lots of things that we can do with riffs. So let's talk about how we get them. Let's take the A minor pentatonic that we've already been using, and we'll use the extended version, which is kind of good because it means that we can use this little shape from behind. Okay, so there's your root note, and we've got the note behind it, which is a G. We've got our A note, which is the root. We've got C, which is the next note of the scale on the next string, and then we've got this D note, remember, because we're tuning the D string to it. So what we do need is we need to add a rhythm to what we're playing. So let's base this first of all by doing a one note riff. Yes, it does happen. Just on that A note, and we're going to play a rhythm. So we're going to play something like 2, 3, 4. Which is a rhythm, and I'd call that a riff. It's a single note, but it's a riff. Now, let's add two notes. Let's try using the note behind. And we'll use that same kind of rhythm, but we'll add a note at a time. Okay, a little bit of extra flavour to it. What if we were to add the note above it? So it would be this one. So we might go. Maybe we want to add another two notes to it, so we're actually playing three notes. So let's play the note below and the note above. So we might go. Maybe we want to use three notes, but we want to use just the notes above the root note, which we can bring in. We can bring in that D. So maybe we play something like this. D, ah. And we can just keep adding notes to the riff. Let's take, for example, let's try using some chromatic notes. Now, chromatics are the notes in between, and there's a short little video on chromatics at the end of this lesson, but here's a little introduction. Let's say instead of playing just these four notes, we've got all 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's create a riff using all those. That was quite complex, and where I would refine that, probably too many notes in there to for a memorable riff, but it does happen where you get lots of notes in a riff. So these are all just examples of what we can do to create some kind of riff. Again, with playing chordal riffs, you might want to try that. So basically, if we take a power chord now, what we're going to do is we're still going to use those 4 notes, but we're going to create a power chord riff. So we're going to attach a power chord to each of those notes. So an A5 or an A power chord, a G5 or a G power chord, a C5 or a C power chord, and a D5 or a D power chord. Okay, so let's take the first one that we did just with 1 chord. So that sounds kind of cool. Let's add this G in. Nice, okay, let's add the note above in, which is a C. Now you have an option here. It might feel a little bit awkward to change strings, and it might not match the sound that you're looking for that's in your head. So how about trying to play the A and then find C up the neck? Now you could actually just count up to C if you needed to. So you'd go A sharp or B flat, then B, and there is no B sharp or B flat. There is no B sharp or C flat, so we go straight to C. Now, as you notice, those 2 notes sound the same because they are the same. So we might go. Okay, let's add all 3 of those chords in, shall we? Can sound kind of cool, right? Let's bring all 4 chords into it and see what we can get. So here we go. Good, yeah. So you can do lots. You can do lots with this idea of riffing, whether it's chords or single notes. What if we were to combine the 2? Well, I'll tell you what. How about let's do that now. So we're going to take a little power chord riff, and then we're going to add a single note riff. Now, because we've got chords going, I'm going to actually play the riff. I'm going to play the little single note riff in this middle section of the pentatonic. So let's take something like this. 2, 3, 4. Now, I'm just improvising, I'm just making stuff up there. But you can see there's loads of potential. So just to recap, playing a riff, just maybe using these single notes, you could find a nice one by putting that slide in actually, and you might have something like... You can do kind of cool stuff like that. You might want to try power chords. Or you might want to try combining the 2 together and going. Loads that you can do. So plenty there for you to get your teeth into. And next week we're going to look at some warm-up exercises. You might think we should have started there, but actually it's nice to just get playing first. And one of the best warm-up exercises you can do is just to actually play, whether it's chords or scales or just jamming along. But there are some little cool finger exercises that will really speed up your playing, strengthen your fingers, and loosen you up before a gig or for a recording session. So they're good to have a go at. So remember, practice slow and build up your speed, and you'll progress much faster. So enjoy that, have some fun, and enjoy this next little video on chromatics. So last week I promised you a short lesson, and this is just going to be a bonus on this week's lesson, and we're going to incorporate the first part of the lesson in with this. We're talking about chromatics. What are chromatics? Well, when you play a scale like the pentatonic scale, you choose certain notes. You choose certain notes to play, and you don't play every fret, you play different intervals or gaps between the notes. Well, chromatics basically means there are no gaps, so you don't put any gaps in. So for example, let's take this middle two string shape of the pentatonic scale. Now if I was to play chromatics in there, for example, stay within the scale but add the chromatics on the notes in between, I'd add these two notes. Okay? Now that in itself is a good little exercise for your alternate picking. But here's the thing, it can be a little bit awkward or a little bit uncomfortable landing on those notes. For example, if I was to play this. You'd have to choose your moment there. How about this one? It kind of works, you can make it work, but generally when you start using chromatic notes, make them passing tones. So you play a phrase like so you'd add the note in. Now technically you could play the whole scale playing chromatics. But I like to use that extended pentatonic and add the chromatics in. That way you're playing that group that we just talked about, but adding all the chromatics. So you'd play something like this. Or if we use that with slides, we might go. Or there's a cool little lick that it's kind of a Steve Morse thing to do. If you've not heard him play, check his playing out. But he might play something like this. It's a good picking exercise, but also if you were to play that all hammer-ons, it can sound really quick. So slowly you'd go. Or if you were to do it as pull-offs. No, if you do it as pull-offs. So same idea, but have a little play around with it. I'll put a little jam track on afterwards with me giving you an example of that, and you can see how it's used. Now we've just been talking about creating riffs. So let's take a riff and add a chromatic to make it sound kind of cool. For example, Paranoid Android by Radiohead, it uses note in the riff. It might go. Which is kind of cool. So let's take a two-note riff, and it might be something like this. 2, 3. Now that's a pretty cool riff, but what if we were to add the chromatic note in at some point? We might go. Just that little flavour makes it sound a little bit more interesting. Let's try a different riff. Let's try. Now let's add some chromatics into that. You see, it starts changing the riff, and you start doing different things, and it can be kind of cool as well. So add it to what you already know. Put some chromatics in with your playing. Remember, you are only one note away from the right one. Okay, so if you find you're landing on a note that doesn't quite sound right, then just move into the shape and resolve it. What resolve means is that if you step outside of the scale, come back to a note that you know is 100% definitely in the scale. So, root note's always a good place to resolve things to, although it can sound predictable, but it's a safe place to be playing. So you can do lots of things. A little pull off run on that top string sounds nice. A little jazz type thing. Or maybe just stepping outside your note, so lots of little things you can do like that. So throw chromatics into your playing, and here's a little example of how those chromatics can work. So I'll see you next time, and don't forget, practice slow, you'll progress fast, and always look for those shortcuts when you're playing to develop. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.